there's this mindset out there that digital is ridiculously expensive. And I always joke with them. I always say, what was your coffee this morning, right? So was it $10? Was it $8? I mean, we can do some, we can get you out there and kind of generate that awareness just from that, right? So let me take you back. So probably, I would say 4 months ago, I was in front of about 50 small businesses. And the conversation that we were having, they wanted to come in and have me give a presentation. And I said, well, why don't we just do a Q&A? Why don't we just kind of go back and forth and kind of like a round table idea? And the questions started coming up. And, the first thing was, where do I begin with my marketing? The second one was, I'm on every social platform, but I'm not getting results. And we've kind of covered those two already in previous podcasts. But the third was, I wish I could afford to do digital like your clients. And I would stop and I would say, what do you mean? And they said, well, it's so expensive. I know your clients, they're doing all these different things and I just can't afford it. And what we really are talking about is not affording. They don't understand it, right? And I think that's really what it is, because what you don't understand, you place a value on. It's the time to learn it. It's the money that's involved. It's, if I don't know about it and I've been in business for a while, it's probably too expensive. That's why they're not targeting me, right? We're not having these conversations. So it's the fear of the unknown, but the unknown is really kind of leading down that path that it's expensive because I don't understand it. And I don't know if you see that in your business as well, Jim, but that's kind of what I'm seeing out there.
Well, I mean, the parallel here is like you're talking to the small business, and I am just a traveler on this podcast because many of the things that Matt Hansen puts forth, I don't do, and I'm kind of doing it to learn a little bit more so that we can institute it in our business. So if you feel that way, like, man, these guys are like pure professionals and they know everything about marketing, Hansen does, but I don't. And I'm in that situation where like I don't even buy digital ads, okay? Right. But I sell digital ads. And so I'm selling streaming video of high school games. So I have to go in and I have to explain to people that you want a TV commercial on live sports, and they're like, "Oh, that can't be, that's just for big guys." I'm like, "No, it's not.
Right.
It's pretty cheap, you got $500 a month, here you go. You'll be on all these games."
Right.
And that's a lot more than would be on social media, but the price points keep coming down too.
Right.
I can put DAI, digital ad insertions. I can have do-it-your-own ads, do-it-yourself ads, and people put them in there, and it just keeps coming down and getting more automated. Well, the same thing with social media. I know that because of your classes, and I've gone through the whole thing, and I can't wait till we get to CPMs, but it's not that hard. No. You just got to learn how to buy them on the interface.
Yeah, exactly. So, we in previous podcasts we talked about kind of focusing in on one area, and that's really what we're looking at here is pick one and go that direction and start to learn as much as you possibly can. Let's go back. We've talked a lot about the family business that we had in regard to home decor and all of that, and I like to kind of pull back stories that I've had with clients because I think that our general audience it's all over the place, right? So we have local retail, small retail shops, we have local services, we have restaurants, we have all these different types of things. We even have large manufacturing, but they're still small businesses, right? So let me take you back to a conversation that I had years ago. And this was a client. They basically called me up and said, hey, we're having this meeting with this one media company. Would you mind coming in and just sitting and hearing about what they're proposing? I said, yeah, sure. That's no problem. It's, it's part of the deal. It's what we do. And this salesperson comes in and starts talking about, and this was a newspaper company back in the day, and they're promoting, they're going to put kind of this town-wide full page, I don't know if it was the back of the newspaper or inside, whatever it was, but they're basically 13 different companies were going to go in and they were going to pay for this full page ad that was going to promote kind of the area and, come see us and all this other stuff. So we started asking the questions, and they're like, well, how much is it per person? I believe, no, it's been a few years, but I believe it was like $200 a person. So $200 a shop, or a restaurant, whatever it may be. And all in, they were like, oh, this sounds wonderful. And I started asking the question. I go, okay, well, what are your goals in mind with this? And they said, well, we want to generate awareness for our shops and our restaurants and all these things. And I said, okay, it's a one-time thing, right? And they said, well, yes. And I go, it goes out one time. Let's say tomorrow it's going to go out. And if it doesn't hit, that's the end of your awareness, right? And they said, well, yeah. And I said, okay, good to know. So you've just invested $200 each into this. Let's take that same $200 and let's go $200 for one day. This is what we're pushing out. What if we threw that into digital and we started to understand that we could spread that out over time? And I was listening to a presentation, I think it was yesterday, and they were talking about how if you throw all of your eggs into one basket at one single moment, if the people aren't there, you're not going to generate that awareness. It's better to spread it out over time. So that $200 was spent in one day. What if we could just go and say, we're going to spend $5 a day, and we're going to spread that $200, $5 a day over time? More people are going to see it, right? And especially in digital, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But really what ends up happening is you have to ask a bunch of different questions. We're going to get to those suggestions here in a few minutes. But needless to say, 40 minutes into this conversation, the deal was dead because I was asking the right questions. And I was training them on what the questions are they need to ask. And over time, a lot of them started getting into the digital space. So.
It's odd that you compare to a newspaper, and that I used to own a newspaper and closed it in 2006 when I looked around and said, this is the wrong business to be in, and I don't want to migrate to like an online news site. That'll take forever. So I just up and closed it, but it was at the beginning, it was 85,000 circulation. Right. And you would have people that could get that kind of awareness if they bought every week.
Right.
But if somebody came in and they said, oh, we want to buy the back page one time, and I'm like, well, what do you have? Oh, well, I got 4 dry cleaners or whatever. Right. I go, one on my back. You're almost trying to dissuade them from doing that.
Right.
So I understand the social media buy is what you're talking about. Meta, you can buy a TikTok, your Google display, that kind of thing. But a lot of times the local business isn't gonna, they're not, how do you make the link between buying on Facebook and how many people come into your store?
Right. So that is a conversation that we like to have, right? We talk, again, the funnel, going back and generating awareness and really driving people over to something that is on your website that they can, they're coming in asking about an offer, they're printing a coupon, whatever it may be. It's getting them into the store, right? So, you can go out there, you can do billboards and radio and TV and newspapers and magazines and all these different things. Your number one job with anything that you do is literally you're pushing one single thing. Is it an offer? Is it a new service that you're offering? Like, that is your one goal. So no matter what you do in marketing, you should have one single goal with every single ad post that you do. So if you're not going into it, right? So I was listening yesterday to that same presentation, and the guy saying, okay, well, do you tell them to call you? Do you tell them to go to your website? Do you tell them to follow you on social? Really, the idea is, what are you doing? Tell them to do one thing and push them towards that one thing. And that's really what we're saying here is, it doesn't matter what media vehicle you choose, right? You go out there and you select something, but you are pushing them to do something. If you don't have that goal in mind, you're wasting your dollars.
All right. We've talked about this before, CPM, cost per thousand. Right. And I don't want to freak anybody out with that, but once you kind of get your hands around that, it's easy to cross-analyze what the different values are. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about, all right, well, you want to start out in digital advertising, what are you talking about?
Well, again, you mentioned CPM. Let's start there. Going back for those that don't know that, it's cost per thousand views of an ad, right? So your ad is served up 1,000 times, and that's our easy way of putting apples to apples. You're not comparing. It's kind of like saying I'm comparing digital on TikTok to the Super Bowl. Well, that's hard, right? So we have the Super Bowl this weekend. The Super Bowl CPM can be roughly around $35 to $40, which is not bad, but you're also paying $5-6 million for it. So you have to look at it in the grand scheme of things. From a digital perspective, we are looking at running video ads. We are looking at running static image ads. You are looking at paid search, which is actually a lot more expensive, and we can get into that if you want. But paid search is you're buying a keyword, right? So Italian restaurant, and that's what you're paying for. So every time somebody clicks on your ad, you're charged for that. Those are pretty expensive, right? So those are, when we talk about kind of where people are in the funnel, they're active searchers at that point, right? So they're actively looking for an Italian restaurant. That's why that one comes in at about $38 CPM. It's a little bit more expensive. I've worked with insurance clients. It's $75 to buy that keyword every time somebody clicks on your ad, and that's really expensive. But when you look at Meta and TikTok and YouTube and Google Display and all of that, you're looking at a much lower rate, a much lower CPM. So you're really looking in that $3 to $15 CPM range. And I printed out some numbers. We've got here for Meta $7.40 to get 1,000 ads put out there. TikTok is $4.40. YouTube is $4.05. Pinterest $7.10. And then you get into Google Display and it gets even cheaper, right? So you're at $3.12. That's interesting because it's cheap, but that's not what we have to look at. There's a variety of things that we have to understand. It's not just about the money, right? So if you're putting something on TikTok, it's about awareness, because a lot of people aren't clicking through over to something. Instagram is the same space. Google Display, you're going to get a much lower click-through rate. On Facebook, you're going to get a much higher click-through rate, which means people are more inclined to click on it. YouTube is the same deal, right? I may watch a video for a little bit and I may skip it. So there's a variety of things that you have to look at and really understand what I know, what I'm good at, what I can actually accomplish, and what's the end goal.
So when you're talking about advertising costs, I mean, you really are, in my mind, comparing apples to oranges in basically looking at a local media or some sort of regional media versus digital. Mm-hmm. And it's always more on the local and the regional side. But so there you go. You're basically from about $3 to $10 on some sort of social media. So what about on the other traditional media?
Oh, well, I printed those out for us today as well. So when you're looking outdoor, you're talking about roughly around $18 CPM. Radio's 15. Streaming and podcast has kind of become popular, obviously, as we're talking on the podcast today. And
18 is kind of low, by the way.
18 is the service that I use to kind of buy nationwide is at 18.
Is that higher on audio or video?
That is just audio.
Yeah, audio. Right. I mean, traditionally, audio versus, like, say, radio versus TV is at about a third.
Right.
So I was going to say 18, man. We're selling our videos at probably around 40-ish in that way, in that direction. And we're selling our radio ads in, like, say, maybe the 12 area on the CPM. It kind of shows you I don't know why it's like that. Mm-hmm. To me, if you're in your car and you hear it, it's more powerful than going and getting some popcorn during a commercial, but they measure it out.
Right.
But so when you're saying streaming, audio much less than video, what about magazines?
Oh, well, magazines is where I actually started in marketing, and it's a dying business. Let's be honest. I mean, magazines, you can spend up to $150 CPM. There's a lot of costs that go into that. I mean, you've got a whole editorial staff, marketing staff, printing, fulfillment, all these different things that go into it. So there's really high costs. Whereas with digital, you're providing the digital, the platform's already there. There's no printing costs and so forth. So, you know, honestly, and a lot of people that are listening probably do a lot of mail, right? So they'll mail to their customers and whatever. And that's really the largest when it comes out from a CPM standpoint, that we're spending the most for the mailing. And that's great because mail is kind of making a comeback. The new generations are really kind of excited to get mail. I know, my family, my son and my daughter, they love getting mail, which I always say, please don't give me the mail because it's always bills. But it's making a comeback. But it's expensive, right? So anytime you have some kind of print cost and a large staff that has to go into it, it really does start to elevate. And that's why we say when we look at digital, it's relatively cheap, right? There's not a whole lot. We've given you the platforms that you can go in there and do it yourself. You don't need to make a phone call. You don't have a rep necessarily that you need to reach out to. There's just platforms that you upload it to and you manage it. So we've trimmed out all the fat, which has allowed us to bring the cost way, way down. I didn't want to brag. I was looking through some of the campaigns that I'm running right now, and the first 7 that I looked at had roughly between I think it was 138 and 340 CPM that they were running right now, just on I looked in Meta just to pull some. And, so you can get really low, but we're saying, you're probably looking more in like the $5 to $7 range.
Well, I mean, there's a thing going on right now. Obviously, we're not in traditional media because we're in streaming video, but we also have a radio station, so I can kind of follow both. But there is a premium on the local traditional one because of the connection with the tradition and basically the positive branding. Mm-hmm. But it's a matter of how much more do you want to pay for that. Newspapers are at what, 28-ish, somewhere like that?
Yeah, newspapers are hitting a certain demographic at this point, right? Yeah. So you're looking for a much older consumer. You start talking to the college kids at campus, they're not looking at newspapers. They're not even watching
There's not
TV.
even one on any of the cafeteria tables like there at one time. What about cable?
Cable is, I've got enough reps in cable that we have these conversations. They're pushing the streaming services and things like that. There's a shift going on. So it doesn't matter where you're at, whether you're in outdoor, whether you're in magazines, whether you're in radio, everything is shifting to digital, and everyone has digital tools that they're pushing, right? So if I sit down with a radio, right? So I sat down probably about a year ago with one of the radio stations in Chicago and just had a conversation about what they could do. And the only thing they were pushing me on was digital, not the radio station that goes over the airwaves. It was everything about podcasting and streaming services, and we can do your social, and we can do all of these things. So everyone has become a digital agency because they know that's where everything is heading. And when you start to look at generations, yes, the older generations still do watch TV and maybe look at a newspaper and read a magazine, but the new generations, they don't listen to radio as they're driving in their car. They attach their phone to the car and they're streaming some kind of music or whatever, right? So yeah, that's kind of where we are today. It depends on the age group that you're going after.
So let's where do I begin? That's the where do I begin? That's like Love Stories song, I guess. But where do I begin with digital advertising? Just to review, pick one.
Yeah, pick one. Definitely just pick one and start with one because everyone wants to try to do too much.
And, of course, you got to figure out where you are on the funnel. Pretty much everybody usually when they're advertising is in the awareness part. Right. But if you guys don't remember the funnel that we talk about, awareness, consideration, and then conversion. Passive versus active. What do you mean by this?
Yeah, so when we're on social media, we are not actively looking for anything. Right? We are a passive audience. We're scrolling, we're watching videos, we're not shopping. So passive platforms such as social media are much cheaper than if you were to go to Google, Bing, Yahoo to do paid search, right? So we are actively searching for something. I need car insurance. That's why it's so much more expensive. So look at it from, am I targeting somebody that's a passive audience versus an active audience, and realize that if it's an active audience and they're paying attention, they're actively searching for something, it's going to get a little bit more expensive.
You go through your social media feed, and there's your ad, and people give you 2 seconds of their attention.
Right.
And you put a TV ad on a cable, and they may sit there and watch the whole thing for 30 seconds. So how do you counsel your clients about the length of the message?
It's be quick, right? Pick one thing, again, one purpose for the ad, and drive them back over to the website for whatever you want, whatever you're trying to promote, right? Don't throw a message out there that's a minute and a half, because people aren't going to stick around. I mean, you've heard the term or heard the discussion about how goldfish used to have the worst attention span. I think human beings are there at this point, right? So straight into the point, don't drag it out. Get that message out as fast as you can. And I see this a lot where people will send me video to run, and it's a very long video. Don't do that, right? Look straight into the point. Let's get them, and because if you're a passive audience, especially, they're scrolling quick, right? Catch them, get them, and then move on.
What about video?
Video is the number one thing, right? So everybody wants to do video, but not a lot of people do video really well. So stick to your strengths, or find somebody that can actually go out there and do the video for you. We were just working on a video shoot this week, and when we got it back to the studio, we looked at it and we said, we got to reshoot this. The lighting was off. There was a hum from one of the computers that you could pick up literally across the room. We didn't think it was going to pick up, but it's little things like that are going to ruin the experience. So we said we've got to reshoot it. So I think we're reshooting it today, if I'm not mistaken. But it's little things. Make sure that you know the ins and outs of everything. So if you got to use Canva for producing ads, please use Canva. At least you know it, right? If you are good in Final Cut Pro or Premiere Pro and you can start cutting video, great, do that as well. But pick what you're good at.
What about budget? Finally.
Right, so everyone thinks you have to have these $500,000 budgets to really do anything, and I had a conversation this week with somebody that's a new restaurant, and they're in a town that's maybe 4,000 people. They're like, oh, we're going to do paid search. And I said, don't do paid search. Go out there and just do a simple social campaign, and maybe do some Google display and drop it right on top of the town. I said, let it run out. And I said, take $500 and spread it out over a month or two and just see how you do, right? And they're like, that's going to work? I said, listen, I can calculate the numbers for you here. With a town of just 4,000 people, you'll be fine, right? They'll see you. Drive them back over to the website where they can see your menu, they can see who you are, what you stand for, and you're going to generate enough awareness just by something as simple as that.
All right, some basic stuff there, talking about digital ads, less than your daily coffee. Really doesn't cost that much. You do have to learn how to use an interface, and then they'll guide you through that pretty good. Final thought.
You know what? Just don't be scared of digital. I mean, learn. Look into it. Look at one platform. I mean, take $200 and just test it out, but test it out over time, right? So throw an ad out there, see how it works. Do the targeting, but don't spend it all in one day, right? Don't go back to the newspaper idea where you print it. It's there for one day. Start it. Take $100, spend it for a month, see what you learn. Go the next month. And I've got a local attorney that I've been working with in the same regard. We put $100 out there the first month. He went, I can't believe that worked. And I said, all right, let's do it again. Let's do it again. And let's do it again. And, now he's building new campaigns and really the targeting and what we're doing. But just test it. Just try it once and see how you do. And learn as much as you possibly can.
That's the message. He's Matt Hansen. I'm Jed. Until next time, see you later.